My guest for this episode of Tales from a Gemini is Lewis Duncan. Lewis Duncan is the international editor and MotoGP correspondent of Autosport magazine. He also does the Tank Slappers podcast. And this is basically two geeks talking about MotoGP and heavy metal and how that basically was their solace growing up. We connected on a level, man, that honestly you have to see. We have a kinship. I didn't even know this guy before this year, and now I feel like we're like brothers from another mother. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you didn't, I did, and that's all that matters. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Yeah, it's BT with Tales from a Gemini. Man, I am so geeked. I'm geeked on all my shows. I know it sounds like a broken record, but it's the truth, man. I love what I do. I love talking to new people. And this episode, it's funny. I'm looking for a guest. So I'm going through, and as I'm doing that, I'm watching a friend of mine. I'm watching his social media, and he's just ripping these solos, right? And I mean, it sounded good. I mean, he's ripping solos, and I'm going, I need a guest. He's ripping solos, and I'm going, I need a guest. And I go, wait a minute. Why not ask this guy? We both love MotoGP. We both love metal. And not the kind of metal that everybody knows. Like, you mean like Bon Jovi? No, I'm talking metal. The kind of metal like you don't listen to with the lights off because you're afraid like the devil's going to be like, yeah, I like this song. I mean, I'm talking real metal. And this guy, we both are reporters. He's a real reporter. He's actually the international editor and MotoGP correspondent for Autosport magazine. He's the real deal. I sometimes get a pass to ask the writers question, and every time he would ask a question, he would have these cool rock T-shirts on, and I saw it said Saxson. Now you have to know your rock and roll. You have to know your rock and roll to know Saxson. Not too many people know Saxson. I mean, that's one of those metal groups that like, whoa. And when I saw that, I go, I got to talk to this guy, and now we're like bestest buddies. My guest today is Mr. Lewis Duncan, the head of the Tank Slappers podcast. Lewis, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, BT, I'm really, that intro, man, that is awesome. I'm so stoked to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you very much. You are the six-string Scott, as I will call you from here on out, the six-string Scott, because if you go to his Instagram, which is LDuncan666, typical rock and roll 666, you got to put the devil's number in there because it makes it more authentic. You go and you watch, and it's great because he's in the GP, he's in the racing. Like I said, he's an editor for Autosport magazine, but you see him rip solos from groups that I have loved. I'm talking like Iron Maiden and all the like Iron Maiden, the hard stuff. Like I said, he's got the Saxson T-shirt. He plays Rush, and I said, hey man, do the beginning of Working Man from Rush, and he did that for me on a personal message. I go, oh, and then I go, yeah, I got to have him on the show. So, dude, when you growing up in Scotland, were you like me? Were like, I don't know how you grew up, but was like music and motorcycle, were they like your personal thing? Were you kind of shy? I kind of get the feeling you were a shy guy growing up.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And, I don't know if I've grown up as such. I've gotten older, not grown up as such. And I'm still definitely a shy guy, It's funny that, like, you're talking about like the MotoGP press conferences. Every time like Frenet, who's the press officer for Dorna, calls my name, I kind of get that thing in my stomach going, oh, here we go. I need to talk now. Hope I don't sound too awkward. But yeah, I did kind of grow up quite shy, and motorsport was always on in the background. My dad was a big fan. It was always Formula One, but there was MotoGP there. And then as I got into high school and really got into motorsport in sort of 2010. That was when I really, really got the bug. I started watching MotoGP, and it overtook everything in my life, but not just MotoGP, motorcycle racing in general, super bikes, Isleman TT, that stuff. It just blew my mind. And it was kind of at the same point where I was really kind of exploring music. We came from, growing up, it was quite good because my mum and my dad had quite varied tastes. So you'd hear lots of stuff like Peter Gabriel, Led Zeppelin, yes, David Bowie. My dad was into loads of stuff, and I'm a child of the Tony Hawk games. So I yes, I heard so much stuff from that, and I remember kind of towards the end of primary school getting into or I suppose you would call that elementary school over in America. And getting into high school, I remember hearing things like TNT from AC/DC and Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast for the first time. And, I'd never heard anything like that before, not consciously anyway.
Right.
And it just took a hold of me, and you know, Iron Maiden became such a big part of my life. You know, one of my earliest musical memories was a Rush riff. My dad had the Rush in Rio DVD, and I remember being transfixed by it because it had this dragon on it, and it had some sort of kind of funny fruit hat. And obviously, being really young, you kind of think, oh, that's quite cool. And it wasn't until years later that I kind of sort of remembered bits and bobs. But the one thing that always stood out for me from that was this riff from a song called Earthshine. And I honestly think that was the point where it just, you know, metal and rock and everything just kind of bore its way into my head, because I never forgot that riff. And then when I got old enough to kind of know what it was, you know, it was just like an awakening almost. You know, you hear something and it just grabs you and then it never lets you go.
Yes.
And, you know, it's been like that, you know, all through my sort of teens, you know, just discovering absolutely everything. Saxon, Scorpions, you know, Tigers of Pantang, and
yes,
Angel
oh
Witch,
my God, you
know,
you have to know
like
metal.
that.
You have to know metal to know Tigers of Pan. Oh my God, how about Yngwie Malmsteen? Do you remember that him also?
Do you know, I don't actually know a lot of Malmsteen stuff. You know, everyone always goes on about Alcatraz, and I think I've got to check these guys out. But I know kind of the main, the kind of big Malmsteen stuff. But as far as kind of guitar heroes go, you know, like the real shred gods, I was always more kind of Gary Moore kind of fan. That was my kind of guitar icon kind of guy.
Oh my God, man, my God, I'm loving this already because I knew it was gonna be like this. I mean, I never get to talk this way with anybody because now, and no disrespect to it, don't get me wrong, it's like now it's more hip hop with people here, and you know, if I always hang around, I skew younger when I hang out with people because people my age are usually married or they're asleep by now. You know what I mean? And I'm up at all hours of the night watching GP, but if not, I love talking moto and I love talking metal, man. Growing up, and I was going to ask that, but I'm glad you answered the question I was going to answer. Like, what song or what group it was that just captivated you, and that was your moment. Like, this is it, and it resonated with you. For me, it was Kiss Alive 2. There's something about a group when you're coming up in the formative years. I don't know if you were bullied, and I don't know if you were like a only child or whatever, but when you're growing up in those formative years and you're trying to find your space in life, and you know, yeah, you have sports cool, but you also have that other kind of when you're not in sport where like, okay, how do I fit in? And it's always music. And there's something about music, and there's either a song or an album cover. And to me, it was Kiss Alive 2 when you open it up. And to this day, and I mean this from bottom of my heart, to this day, when I see the album cover Kiss Alive 2 on the back, when Gene Simmons has that like this and he's covered in blood and sweat, it still makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up, man.
Yeah, well, music, it's, you know, it's the kind of the unifying force of the world. You know, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your background is, you know, what your deal is. You know, everyone is unified by music. You know, you don't necessarily like to, you know, have to like the same thing as everyone else, but it means something to you. Right. And even, you know, like you're talking about Kiss Alive 2, you know, I totally get that, but, you know, you have that kind of goosebump moment with Kiss Alive 2. I have that with Iron Maiden's Peace of Mind. That was the first CD I ever bought. You know, and it's just the great thing about music. It's such a force for good, you know?
Man, it's so funny you say that. That's how I feel connected with you because I remember, and I don't remember the actual first Iron Maiden song, but I just remember getting Number of the Beast, and I just remember, oh, to you, oh,
yeah.
I was like, what the fuck is this? And then you hear that boom, 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 and like, oh shit. And I remember that just punching me right in the fucking face. Like, this is going to be they were different. Like, I loved metal, but there was that kind of formula metal, you know? And don't get me wrong, I love cheesy shit. I love Dawkins. I'll take up Dawkins in here. But but me personally, when I heard Iron Maiden and when I heard Scorpions, there was something different. And when I heard Number of the Beast, I was like, okay, I'm hooked. And then Peace of Mind, I just remember getting Peace of Mind, like you said, and I remember hearing, it was just different. I remember hearing The Flight of Icarus, and then The Trooper came on and just kicked your ass. When you're bump, 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 and you're like, whoa. And the songwriting, because they had the lyrics in if you got the cassette, did you have the cassette?
I had the CD version.
Okay, you open it up and they got the lyrics.
Yeah.
And you're like, and they're talking about stuff you've never talked about. But we usually, you know, with the crew, whatever, you know, it's always girls and stuff, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But you're going, okay, you know, the horse dying and the Russian, and okay, talking about the war. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you talk about Number of the Beast. That was, I'm sure, was the first Iron Maiden song I heard because it was in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. we weren't like a religious family or anything, and I don't have a problem with religion. You know, I would defend someone's freedom to practice a religion to the death. But I don't think our primary school was very religious, but for whatever reason, every Friday we'd be in the assembly hall singing, you know, God tunes. And then, you know, every Easter or Christmas, you'd always have to go to church and do the usual service thing. And there was always that kind of mantra of you need to do this and stick to a certain path. And, you know, you can't do this or else you go to hell and all that sort of thing. And I remember hearing the Number of the Beast, you know, these guys singing 666, you're thinking, whoa, you know, and, you know, Bruce Dickinson with his air raid siren voice. And from that moment, and I remember my dad saying, "Oh, you know, I've got these Iron Maiden CDs," and sure enough, he did. So that's how I heard things like, you know, I'm 10, 11 years old, and you're hearing things like Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, which, you know, couldn't have been any further removed from what everyone in my school was listening to. But I know what you mean exactly about the songwriting. I mean, you know, Peace of Mind is one of those albums that, from the, you know, that drum intro into Where Eagles Dare just grabs you by the scruff of the neck, and then until the outro to Tame a Land, you know, it has you hooked. And the way Steve Harris writes things is just, and his lyrics are amazing. I always kind of, people kind of look at me funny when I say I'm quite inspired by that in my own work, because obviously when you have to write a race report, for example, you've only got, you know, 5 minutes to do it, and it needs to be, you can't go 10,000 words. It has to be short, sharp, and to the point. So, you know, you take like a song like The Trooper, you know, the bugle sounds, the charge begins, but on this battlefield, no one wins. You've got in 5 or 6 seconds this great descriptive imagery, and you're there, you're transported. And I kind of try and do that with my race reports. If you read my race reports, they almost sort of read like a battle almost, because that's kind of how I view it. And that's just because I was brought up with, you know, the lyrics of Iron Maiden, and you know, it does have an effect on you.
No, it does. And it's cool that you said that. I mean, I did read your stuff like that, but now I'll look at it differently because we're inspired. And I think no matter where you take your inspiration, you use that in things that you do. Like for instance, like I've always wanted to go to the Olympics in wrestling. Obviously, I didn't get close. But to this day, when I jump rope before I work out, I jump rope for 6 minutes. And that's the time limit of an Olympic wrestling match. And everything has that effect on you. Like when I come out to work out, to go on the floor to actually lift the weights, I have to have a song coming in. It's like I'm walking in to get ready to go to battle. And it's got to be, and to me, I love all kind of music, but nothing, and I mean nothing hits harder to me when I'm working out than Hell's Bells or Thunderstruck. I mean, Hell's Bells, when you're coming out and you go, dong. No, I mean, you just want to just take somebody's face and just run it into a fucking brick wall, and you know what I mean, and just lift all the weight or get out of my way. I'm trying to get this, and it transports you or gets you in the mental space, and that's what music has always done, you know. And that's why I think where people they kind of like have that like this group is mine, you know what I mean, like especially if you're growing up and you're, at least for me, for a little bit in life, like. Everything's different now, and I always tell people, unless you look at social media or look at the news or TV, I say life is better, and I say that because growing up, you know, I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood, and I liked Kiss, and it sounds like nothing. If a black kid likes rock and roll now, it's no big deal, but for me. I was ostracized from my family, from people in my neighborhood. They were like, what? And they thought I wanted to be white. So they were like and I was just by myself. But man, when I went in my room and I'm dating myself, I put my 8-track in. I put an 8-track tape in or a cassette or I put an album on. I had all three. And that was when, okay, these guys are mine. And I just remember like Back in Black, Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind, Blackout by the Scorpions. That was my solitude. That was when, you know, the names people call me, it didn't hurt me because these groups were mine. And to this day, that's what resonates with me. Was that the same with you?
Yeah.
Like when you grew up, are you an only child or how
Well,
was it growing up?
we were quite a big family. You know, I had three sisters. You know, I had a youngest sister who was 2 years younger than me, so we shared a room, and we had quite different kind of likes and interests growing up. So you did kind of have to have that sort of thing that was kind of your own.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had two older sisters. One, you know, you know, it wasn't a difficult childhood as such, but we were never like a rich family. So, you know, there wasn't the holidays and the fact, you know, fancy new stuff. My parents worked their balls off to give us everything, you know, and I'm eternally grateful for that. But it was certainly when I got into school, I always felt kind of, particularly high school, there was kind of, you know, I wasn't an easy person to get on with just because I didn't like the same kind of stuff that everyone else liked.
Yes.
I didn't really care to do the same sort of stuff as everyone else liked. And, you know, I was kind of socially awkward, and I still am. You know, I liked Formula One instead of football, and I liked Iron Maiden instead of, you know, whatever rubbish was in the pop charts.
Like Wham.
And yeah, you know, whatever kind of, you know, like Ed Sheeran or whatever was, you know, that sort of stuff. It just didn't do it for me. And, but yeah, I'd go home and, you know, put records on or whatever, and it was an escape. You know, you put the headphones on. There's nothing I love more than just being on my own, headphones on, and just completely just slipping away into a different world. Just, you know, and it's a great thing about music, like you say, is it is such a transportive thing. And, you know, especially a concert, you know, a concert for me is like the ultimate sanctuary. You know, you go into this concert hall or an arena or whatever, as soon as those doors close, you know, the world's shut out. Everything is outside, all your troubles, whatever. And for a few hours, you can be free, just fully free to enjoy, you know, just enjoy life. And, you know, even sport, I think, doesn't quite have that same sort of property as music.
Well, you know, I always like when I get a chance to interview a writer or whatever, I always like to ask them, you know, if you listen to music, what do you listen to, and you know, what song is it, and why? Because, you know, like sometimes you think they want us to do something that's like hard, but then again, though, they're going to go out and do this battle. Maybe they need to be calm before the storm. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to know that. Like, what do you listen to? What gets you in that space? Because music can do that for you. But I would think if I was a writer, I think I'd want something more calming, more, because you're about to start that business, man. When that goes off and they take it off the thing, and I call it the Shank-a-link-a-link moment, where it's like, you know, and they get that last kind of, and they get that handshake, and they leave, and they get that woo when they start it, and they walk. Man, that is another prickly moment on the back of your neck moment, man, because they're about to do that business. And it's weird because you feel that, even though the bikes are just parked there, you feel that energy, that power from the bike. It's almost like when a wild animal, just a horse, is there. You know that you feel that power, and you see that bike, even though they're just standing there, you feel that power. And for me, to me, it's synonymous. Maybe it's because I remember when the movie Faster came out, the trailer for it had Black Rebel Motorcycle Club with Whatever Happened to My Rock and Roll. And to this day, I downloaded that song. To this day, when I hear that song, it makes me, when I'm working out, like, yeah. But I think about when Loris Caparati was like, how fast do you go? 300 kilometers per hour. He goes, pretty fast. He goes, yeah, it's good, no? You know? And that's what, it transports me to that.
Yeah,
and that's why it made me want to be a motorcycle racer. You know what I mean? I mean, that music does that shit to you. But I think sport and music, you feel that, like at a concert, like you said, when the doors close, you almost feel that vibration from the speakers that, oh, it's like, oh, here we go.
Yeah. Oh, there's that anticipation. It is like the start of a race. You know, you're waiting for it, build up. You know, the intro track comes on. You get, you know, with Iron Maiden, it's great because it's the house lights go down and then Doctor starts by UFO, which is awesome because you've got this great UFO song, and then you know something's going to happen. And it's almost like that. It's almost like when that just moment for a band comes on, it is almost like that point of no return. Like whatever happens now, you're into it. You know, there's no going back. And it's a really, it's a really visceral feeling, which we sadly missed for the past sort of 18 months with everything that's gone on in the world, sadly. But, you know, things are coming back. You know, concerts have been happening. Nothing that I've been able to go to yet, but, you know, we'll get there. But and I like how you mentioned Faster, because, you know, I remember the follow-up to that Fastest. You know, I remember that the intro to that film being so kind of big on me. Just, you know, that 15 minutes of talking about Barcelona 2009 and the way the music sets it up, and how they set up the drama. That for me encapsulates everything I love about MotoGP, and I think really pushed me full force into kind of taking it on as a career, I suppose.
Yeah. You're almost like me in a way. It's like, I was doing comedy and I was doing this and that, and in a way I felt like I lost my way a little bit. I moved from LA. I felt like I with my tail between my legs, and I was looking for some kind of, I don't know, it was like searching. And I was trying, and I was kind of getting back to my I got a mini bike when I was a kid, and I fell in love with that. Like, I got a mini bike. And then, like, that was about the same time that I started liking rock and roll. Like, I was Earth, Wind, and Fire until then. I was an R&B guy until then. And then Kiss just blew my, like, who are these guys? And then because of the ostracization, it became Kiss, and it became a mini bike. And then, I was going to get another one, but my folks split up. So, I went through all this whole life doing whatever, but bikes were always in the foreground. I always liked them. And then it was like my life did a 180, and I came back to my love for motorcycles. So when I moved to Indianapolis, I got a motorcycle, and ever since then, and I got a motorcycle and MotoGP, and then that was, to me, just everything came back full circle. And I never lost my rock and roll, don't get me wrong, but when the motorcycles came, that to me almost completed my life. And it's like I've been a geek for it ever since. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But yeah, it's funny. I mean, I think everyone goes through that. At any point in their life, they have a kind of discovery period. I remember kind of going through high school, and you kind of other things interest you. I wanted to be a mechanic for so long, and then but I wasn't really. I don't know why, because I'm not that clever a person. Like, I don't really know any of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then it was by chance that journalism kind of came along, and writing, because I wasn't even great in English. Like, I didn't apply myself in school. I didn't like being there. I didn't want to be there. The only thing I cared about was, Iron Maiden and, Formula One and, playing my PlayStation. I just never felt like it was giving me anything.
Yeah.
Because you go to school nowadays to pass exams. You don't go to school to learn, which is certainly in this country. It's just such a big problem. And then I remember I used to read F1 racing magazine all the time. And I'd write away to get into the Star Letter competition, because you could win Grand Prix tickets. So I thought, well, you never know. And sure enough, one in the February issue of 2012, my letter appeared as the winner. And I was like, whoa, what the hell? And I'd won these Grand Prix tickets, and then it just clicked. I remember it because every morning before I went to get the bus, or whenever the magazines came out, I would like go to the shop first of all and then get on the bus. But I was running late that morning. And I thought, well, if I get this bus, I'll get to school on time, but then I won't get my magazine until end of the day. So I thought, I'm going to get my magazine and I'll be late for school. So I get this magazine, get on the bus, and open it, and I see my name at the bottom of this page. I was like, I couldn't believe it. And then from there, it just sparked. I was like, well, I liked writing that. I quite liked seeing something I wrote, was deemed worthy enough for a magazine. And obviously the reward day was the fact that I get to go to a Grand Prix. So that was the point where I was like, maybe this writing thing's maybe something I should explore. And again, I don't know why, because my grasp of the English language wasn't great. I wasn't a great writer in high school. I still struggle with a lot of like the kind of the theory of writing and things like that.
Yeah.
But it just became an obsession. I just couldn't imagine doing anything else. So I began writing, and then it just, everything kind of clicked. As soon as that was like my main focus, and my love of like rock and metal really kicked off big time, and it just sort of ran side by side. And actors, like I say, is a big inspiration. I was listening to everything. I wasn't a big reader, and I'm still not a big reader. I mean, I enjoy books, but I just don't get a chance. But music was always, listening to music, listening to lyrics was always the thing for me. And when you're growing up listening to things like Iron Maiden and Rush, especially, Neil Peart, what a lyricist,
Yes.
And the way Neil had this canny knack for writing such, introspective lyrics. Like, there were almost songs that were written for you. Take it like a song like Subdivisions. Every time I hear that, it always feels like it's a song that could have been specifically written for me. And Neil Peart was such a big kind of inspiration to me.
And why is that? Why do you feel like it was written for you?
I don't know. I just the way that it touches on this kind of kid, growing up with no place, knowing in his heart that the world's much bigger than this little subdivision that he lives in. And, the line "be cool or be cast out," in the shopping malls, in the basement bars and things like that, be cool or be cast out. That struck a chord with me because like, well, yeah, because I don't really identify with all these kind of popular people. I was never a popular person.
Yeah.
And the kid, I remember seeing the music video and the kid's on his own, watching the Rush video on the TV, and then at the arcade, his mind is elsewhere. And there's another great line in that as well. Those who those who sell their dreams for small desires will lose the race to rats and get caught in ticking traps. And I just thought, I remember thinking, yeah, I don't want that from me. I don't want to do an ordinary job. I don't want to do a 9 to 5 and then, that's it, stay in the same town I grew up. And there's lots of that, songs like Time Stand Still, it's a kind of one of the cheesier Rush songs, but it's got a great sort of outlook on, don't kind of let time pass you by, essentially. Yes. And I just get so much of that from Rush's stuff, which is why I love them so much. There's just something about the way Neil Peart wrote lyrics. It's just I really grab onto. And, like I say, it acts as a big sort of inspiration for me as a writer, which it might not be obvious if you read like a feature about like Maverick Vinales, for example, but I like to think that it is there,
Yeah. Whenever, for me, when I hear, that's why I had you play Working Man. Whenever I hear that down,
yeah,
and man, I'm like, fuck, I always go, fuck yeah. It's like one of those songs where somebody's in the car, you go, shut the fuck up, and you turn it up. You know what I mean? Don't say a fucking word. That's the way I feel when a song is mine. Like, shut up, I don't want to hear it. Because that song blew my damn mind when I heard that song.
Yeah.
Man. So with like, so you grew up with like loving like F1. So like, who was your favorite drivers initially in the beginning?
Well, Michael Schumacher was, because he was doing all the winning at the time, so you naturally gravitate to that. But yeah, for me, there was 4 drivers that really I hooked onto. Schumacher was one. Mika Hakkinen, when he was still racing, was another one. I still really like Mika. The older I get, the more I like Mika Hakkinen. Just when you watch documentaries and things, and just the way he talks and the way he approached his racing, and he was fast as fuck. Mika Hakkinen was awesome. Jenson Button was another one. And David Coulthard, obviously being a Scotsman. So those were kind of the 4 guys I really kind of hooked onto. But I found quite early on, as much as I liked those drivers, I was never really all that partisan. I liked all the drivers in different ways, or most of the drivers in different. I just liked the racing more than anything, and that sort of stuck as well with MotoGP. When I got into that, I was a big fan of Marco Simoncelli because I just liked his style.
Yeah.
But I liked all of it. I love my first full season watching was 2011. So, I remember Simoncelli, and there was guys like Pedrosa and Stoner, and, Rossi was struggling, but Rossi's still Rossi. He had Lorenzo. Right. He had all these guys, and I just kind of, there was something different about all of them that I liked, and they added to this kind of this narrative that was going on, all the rivalries they had and the racing that they were doing on track. And, that continued, and Marquez comes along and you think, oh, you got this new player on the board essentially. And another, it's like, what's going to happen next? You get all these young guys coming up, and that to me is more exciting than having, just like following one rider and that being it. And then as I got more into the history of it, I really sort of fell in love with American riders, learning about Wayne Rainey and Kevin Schwantz and Freddie Spencer. And, through this job, I've been so like some of the best things that I've done is interviewing like Kevin Schwantz and Wayne Rainey. A few times we did that for a special 1991 retro issue of Autosport, where I got to write about the 91 season. So to talk to the 2 of those guys about that was, that was a real high point for me.
Oh, that had to be. Now, when did you make that gradual switch from F1 to GP? Like, I'm still more GP, although I'm giving a little bit more attention to F1. I think that rivalry between Mad Max and Lewis is what the sport needs. That's what it needs.
Yeah.
But That being said, I really think Lando Norris and George Russell are the better talents. I think if you put Lando Norris in a better car, I think he's better than Mad Max. That's just me talking out of my ass, but I just think that Norris is better.
Well, it's definitely a change into the guard in Formula One right now, which is great because you've got, like you say, Russell's coming up and he'll be on a Mercedes next year, which is great because Lewis Hamilton hasn't really had a proper good teammate in a while. Not taking anything away from Bottas, but he was never signed to be a world champion. You've got Charles Leclerc at Ferrari. Sainz will figure things out. Max is a great driver, but he's got a lot to sort out, I think, in his approach. But yeah, I mean, going back to your original question, I mean, Formula One was my big passion, and through 2010, 2011, 2012 especially, I was obsessed with it. And then sort of 2013, things started to get really quite boring in Formula One, and sort of for the next few years. And it was the same time where I was really kind of, my love of MotoGP was kicking off. And I could sort of see that Formula One was doing things wrong, whereas MotoGP was doing things right. Dorna was doing all these things. Like with the regulations, Formula One was getting less competitive and MotoGP was getting more competitive. And you could kind of see sort of where they were starting to fork off a little bit. You could see the branches. Formula One was going in one direction, which wasn't healthy. The MotoGP was heading towards this golden era that we're in now. And there was more exciting about it. Like, I wasn't interested in watching Hamilton and Nico Rosberg race each other when the hybrids came along, because that's all you had for a few years. Whereas you had Mark versus Lorenzo, you had Mark Rossi and Lorenzo in 2015.
Mark crashing everybody. Mark basically doing what Dominica Gerter did to Jody Torres every week, but not getting penalized for it. You know what I mean? But he provided that excitement. Like, who's this young gun? And everybody was pissed off at him. But and think about it. He changed the game. Before him, you had to go with a satellite team and then a factory team. But when he came up, they go straight to factory. Because I remember Ben Spees tweeted, "Oh, I guess you got to be Spanish to do this." Yeah. I remember that Spees was pissy. But I saw the rise of Marquez when he was in 125 and he kept crashing. And I remember Nick Harris going, "When this kid gets it," and I just remember him saying that, "When this kid gets it," and oh boy did he get it, and boy did he get it. And so I can see that gradual. And here's the thing personally, I think when you have to always constantly change the rules, because if you do that, you got to make it more competitive. And then with F1, what makes me so pissed off is those guys, there's no passing. There's no, like with GP, at least you get, oh, here we go. Ooh, you know what I mean? That close racing, like, and you're like this on the edge of your seat. Where Formula One, it's like they got to wait a second and then they get the DPS and they pass, like, okay. It's like, I want close racing. I want something like,
Yeah, and I mean, with MotoGP now, you've got all 6 manufacturers can win races now. We've seen that. You see, the past couple of weeks have been great. Ducati versus Yamaha and Ducati versus Honda. You had 2 very different races at Aragon and Misano, and they were both brilliant. You had obviously that duel between Pecco Bagnaia and Marquez and Aragon, which was fabulous. Then you go to Misano and you've got a very different race where you've got Fabio being the hunter and Bagnaia really having to defend him off. And it was great. It was fantastic. A few weeks ago we had KTM winning races. You've got rookies on Pramac bikes, and Avintia bikes and get onto the podium and win races. You go, we've had 8 different winners so far, and if you look at since 2016, there have been 3 seasons already where we've had 8 winners or more, which says everything about where MotoGP is right now, because 2016 was the big season. That was when they changed the electronic rules, to make things more
competitive.
More competitive. The new financial regulations came in to help the satellite teams. And now every bike on the grid, apart from the 2 Avintia bikes and now Dovizioso's bike at Petronas SRT, are all factory bikes. You just don't have that in motorsport in general. That at a world championship level, to have that level of competitiveness, top machinery for every rider. We're seeing 3, 4, 5 guys come up from Moto2 every season. You've got like 2 seasons now. You could be a big name for 2 years, and then all of a sudden it's gone because you're not hot shit anymore. And it's not because you're a bad rider. It's just because, if your results drop a little bit, then you've got this new guy coming up who's dominant. You know, look at Raul Fernandez. You know, look at
Oh
Pedro
my!
Costa.
I was gonna save that one for later, but since you brought it up, Raul Fernandez, dude. I mean, and here's honestly, I can't prove it, but man, he and his brother are straight gangsters, man. I mean, they say the right things, but you can't tell me when the camera's not on them. Those dudes are straight gangster. When I found out Adrian Fernandez started the fight with Fenati, you know what I mean? He started the fight, and you can't tell me if he's going to fight Fenati. And Fenati's a grown-ass man. He's probably older than us. I mean, and he's racing Moto 3, and here's little Adrian fighting him, and you can't tell me he didn't tell his older brother, and his older brother's getting ready to go out for Moto 2. He did what? And he got to take his helmet off and go, hey, man, did you talk? What's up to you with my brother? And then he got to go back and race him on. You can't tell me he can't tell me Raul and Fenati didn't have words, and then he's got to go out and race. Come on, man. I think the Fernandez and they're keeping it quiet. I think they're the most gangster dudes in the paddock. I can't prove it because at that level they keep it nice, but man, Raul Fernandez and Adrian Fernandez are straight gangsters.
Raul's definitely got a touch of the kind of silent assassin about him. Like when he gets upset and he gets angry, he doesn't really show it. I mean, there's quite a big thing right now. He's not massively happy about going to Tech 3. He wanted to go to Yamaha with Sepang Racing Team because he felt the bike would be better for him, but there was a buyout clause that ultimately KTM didn't really honor. You know, the Yamaha would have put the money down if it came to that, but essentially KTM weren't going to let him go anywhere.
You can't let somebody really wanted.
Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword because KTM naturally aren't going to let those guys go, but that kind of management structure, they've locked him into a 2-year deal that he's not massively happy about. And obviously we've seen with Maverick and Yamaha how things can sever. We've seen, how things can sever between, Zarco and KTM is another example. It's understandably KTM wants to lock these guys down, but the management kind of style is it's kind of borderline obsessive. And I think at some point there will be cracks that will form because, if you've got like a real talent like that, you want to do everything to make him happy. You don't want to upset him, essentially. Look at like Ducati right now with Pecco and Jack and Jorge Martin. There's a real love in there. Ducati are giving them everything they need. They're, Jack talks about, I just want to see a Ducati winning races. I'll help Pecco if he needs it, sort of thing. There's no. That's the kind of atmosphere that is. It's been, it's not always been like that with Ducati. Let's be fair. Yeah. But that's the kind of thing that's been fostered there. Whereas at KTM, it can be a little problematic. I mean, Paul Espargaro leaving was quite a surprise, and that's down to the management kind of style there. And it'll be interesting to just see how the Fernandez thing goes, if he lets it get to him, if he just accepts the situation and just focusing on himself. That'll be an interesting kind of subplot to keep an eye on next year.
Well, you said something very interesting in your Pink Cypress podcast. You said that Ducati is almost developing the perfect bike. I mean, of course they have that top speed down the straight where you can't catch them, but now they can turn. Now they can go. I mean, and that was where Yamaha would catch them. But if they develop that like a Yamaha, man, they're going to be untouchable. And I think. You're looking at Bagnaia, and which he should get all the accolades for what he did 2 weeks in a row, getting the lead and fighting off the challenges. Good for him. I think Bagnaia deserves the credit for last week for what he did. But like you said, you brought it up was a great point. Was that he's always at that track though. I mean, he's training at the track, even though it's not a GP bike. He's always at the track. He knows that, even though it's a 2-year-old bike, he's always at that track. So whatever. But man, Fabio is doing something that's reminiscent to me of what Marquez did in that year, the one that he got either first or second. The one where he has no help. Basically, he got no help at all, and he's a one-man wrecking machine. I mean, what Fabio's doing, he's got his head right, and that's the number one thing. He got his head right, and once the head gets right, everything else goes. And I mean, he wasn't even supposed to be where he was in Mazzano. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was flanked by Ducatis. He had no help. He had nobody around. And he comes in there, and he came in and did what he had to do. And granted, Martin crashing kind of helped him because honestly, I think Martin would have had him. I think Martin would have passed him. But what Fabio's doing mentally shows.
Yeah.
But it's not over yet.
No, for sure. But Fabio. I've just been so impressed by Fabio this year. We knew he was quick. We saw that in 2019. We saw that last year, but the bike wasn't great. It was too inconsistent, and anytime things went wrong, he just let it build up on him. And like you say, he got his head right. He's and this is the thing I love about this modern era, is that talking about working with sports psychologists and talking about your mental health in sport is not a taboo anymore. It's not seen like, you have to be this Terminator type person, rock solid heads, no fear, no emotion sort of thing. Whereas Fabio's gone, well, and he's done it quite a lot, after his first race in 2019 when he stalled on the grid, when he qualified 5th. He said afterwards, I had to go to and speak to a sports psychologist because I was destroyed by that. And then it helped him. He was stronger from then on. He did it in his Moto2 days. He had a really bad qualifying at Argentina in 2018. And he thought, well, what am I doing here? This isn't working. So he went and spoke to someone. And then, his results turn around quickly and he gets that MotoGP ride. And it was the same again last year. He was open about it. He said, look, after this year, I'm going to go speak to a psychologist. He gave him techniques to use. So when things get difficult, he does that and it calms him down. And his approach has been the most impressive thing because it's almost like Marc Marquez in a sense. Marc, when in 2019, every weekend he'd be like, okay, our first objective is the podium. So we'll go into practice and we'll see where we are. And then we'll think about the victory. I'm not thinking about the championship. And that's exactly what Fabio does. He comes into every weekend. He goes, we'll see where we are in practice. Podium's the first goal. If we can get that spot on, let's see what's what. If we can get the victory, great. If I can go for the victory, I'm going to go for it. The championship, I'm not thinking about the championship right now. Of course, I'm not going to make any stupid mistakes, but it's not going to dominate my thoughts. And that was we saw that last week. He goes to Aragon. His pace was good, but he had a problem with the tires, so he's 8th. He goes to Misano and he pushes like hell. He said, I nearly crashed a couple of times, but I enjoy being on the limit. And he's just enjoying riding. He's enjoying taking advantage of the bike when he can. And he bounced back. He got a 2nd place. Yes, his championship lead is down a few more points to 48, but he's just still that mentally resilient Fabio that we've seen at so many points this season. And it's hard to see him not winning the championship. I think if he loses the championship, it'll be a travesty, not taking anything away from whoever does happen to beat him. But Fabio has just been the class of the field this year. He's been so impressive.
My God, if he doesn't win, then we'll see if that mental resolve is there. Because I just thought about that. My damn self, I go, you know what? If he doesn't win, it goes him not winning, then the fall of the Roman Empire. And that's what that'll be. Because, because he deserves it. But the interesting thing is, they did Misano. Okay, they're coming to Dakota here. They're coming to the United States. And then they're going back to Misano. And nobody holds home court better than the Italians. I don't know what they do, but they hold home court better than anybody. Spanish included, man. There's something about, they get on Italian soil. They want to impress for their people. They do what they got to do. The Italian people come out. They're crazy. They know they're crazy. And those guys want to show their people that, hey, I'm doing it for you. It's just a different kind of environment. And who knows what happens? I mean, when you go into that whole shot, especially Misano, you don't know what's going to happen. You get one of those crazy riders that, okay, I got to make my bones this race, and wipes him out, God forbid, wipes him out, and then say Bagnaia wins a race, and then you cut that point deficit, and you never, and like I said, they go back to Italy, they go back to home turf, and then Bagnaia there, he's got all the ducks by him, even though they said there's no team orders. You know what that means, man. They'll protect him. Come on, man. So you never know going in, but yeah, if he loses, somebody better, he'll be in a dark room going, Fabi, you okay? And he'll just be like, blah, 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 blah. Are you sure? You okay, buddy? I mean, you have a 24-hour watch on that guy. But he should win the championship. But going back, though, honestly, I really am interested to see. Although I really feel Remy Gardner's going to win, there's something about Raul, man, that just like, he keeps coming. I mean, a broken hand, man. I mean, he's like the Richard Kimball, Dr. Richard Kimball from The Fugitive. He's a one-armed man, and he's winning races with one arm, and he's winning pretty convincingly. Granted, I mean, Remy did a great job of catching him last week, but he still won with a broken hand.
Yeah.
And something about Raul, and you never know.
Yeah, well, Raul's definitely got. I think Raul is at that point of the championship now that there's nothing really to lose. Like everything's against him in terms of, you know, Remy's been more consistent. Remy's got the point lead, but you know, like you say, anything can happen, and it will be interesting when they get to MotoGP. I think Raul would take to it a lot better than Remy will, because it took Remy a good few years in Moto2 to get kind of used to the bike and get up to speed. Whereas, of course, Raul's jumped in and has been quick straight away. I think what we'll see with Raul will be very similar to what we've seen with Enea Bastianini. You know, he jumped into Moto2 in his first year and he was quick straight away. You know, he's jumped up to MotoGP and he's quick straight away. Whereas you look at Luca Marini, it took him a few years in Moto2 and it's looking sort of a similar trend.
Right.
So I think we've got that in Raul. But it'll be interesting. You know, the two of them were on track today at Misano in the test, and Raul was quicker than Remy by about 7/10. So you can't really read anything into a test, but it was interesting to see that there was quite that spread. I know Remy had a crash, but yeah, there was 7/10 is quite a lot, you know, for given that both of them were in the exact same boat.
But what I want to know though is, even though it's a MotoGP bike, Remy's winning and leading the championship Moto2. I mean, will that play a little bit of a mental when they come to America and they get it back in their Moto2 bikes? I mean, how do they get along in the pack? Do they even talk? I mean, do you know the? I know you're the ends. You know the ends. I'm the kid that
I don't know what. I don't know what the relationship is like. No, I think there's not been any news of any fights, so I think they're all right. It's very professional. I think would be the best way to describe it.
I think Raul would shut it down. I think word wouldn't get out. He'd be like he put the kibosh on it. Like I said, man, he's gangster, but you can't prove it. But there's something about Raul, man.
Yeah, he does look like he can handle himself in a fight. You know, he just looks like the kind of, you know. You'll not see him coming. You'll not see him coming. You'll just see this flash, and you'll be on the ground with Raul standing over you.
Yeah. And Adrian going, "I told you my big brother was going to help me." He's like the Joe Pesci. "I told you my big brother was going to help me." I just feel like Adrian starts trouble, and Raul has to come in and squash it. I just feel
wow, that's what the baby brother's for, is he not? You know, start the trouble, big brother will sort it out.
That's what I feel. And a little bit about Moto3, I feel personally, even though he hasn't won a while, I think what Acosta's doing is almost brilliant. Even though he's not winning, he kind of knows where Sergio Garcia is. And he keeps him at arm's length, you know? He's like a boxer that's got the fight won, and he's not getting in any trouble.
He's doing almost what Fabio's doing in MotoGP, in that he's getting the maximum result that's on offer. At Misano, it was 7th. You know, that was the best that he was going to get that day, and he got it. You know, Garcia could have won that Grand Prix, and he only got 4th. So, you know, the damage that he could have inflicted was massive, and he didn't take the opportunity. And that's not the first time that's happened this year. You know, it's funny because a lot of people you get like a guy who like Acosta, who's got so much hype around him, and then he starts not winning, and you kind of think, oh, you know, everyone's obviously got ahead of themselves. But you can't forget that the kid's 17, and it is his first season. You know, he's going to make mistakes. He's going to go into tracks he won't know. He's getting into situations he's not been familiar with before. It's all a learning process. You know, at 17, you know, I don't know how he does it. At 17, I wasn't mature enough. I'm 25 now, and I can barely look after myself. So, you know.
I was going to ask you how old you were, because I go, this guy, you talk older, but you look younger. You're one of those weird guys that could go out with a girl who's like 18, but you can also go out with a woman who's like 52, and it wouldn't be weird. You know?
Well, as long as the conversation sticks to MotoGP and like Iron Maiden, then it'll be all right. Because other than that, I don't think my social awkwardness would let it happen.
I could see that happening, man. I really could. Like, I don't know how old this guy is. I really don't. If we were in a car together, we got pulled over by the cops. They go, "How old's your buddy?" I have no idea.
Yeah,
he could be 42. He could be 42 or 12. I have no idea, officer.
Well, that seems like too good an opportunity to pass up. You just want to see how much trouble you can get into. You know, oh, it's all right. He's like my legal guardian. It's fine.
Yes. gotta do that sometime. We should go out and be like, and we just go to girls. How old do you think my buddy here is? I don't know. We'll go out with him. See, I think we should do that. We should hang out sometime, man. You know? Okay. I wanted to ask you this. I want to ask you since we're on the subject of rock and roll and whatever and MotoGP or whatever. I wanted to ask you, give me 3 bands who are underrated. The most underrated bands. Underrated.
Wow. Well, a big one for me is a band from England. Came around about the same time as the new wave of British heavy metal. Angel Witch. Their first album is off the charts. It's an album. It's one of these albums you talk to. If you read any interviews with like Dave Mustaine or guys like that, they'll always talk about Angel Witch. Angel Witch are great. That first album was awesome. Underrated. There's a heavy metal band out of Germany that I really dig called Running Wild.
Okay.
They're kind of the sort of forefathers of pirate metal. They had songs like Under Jolly Roger and Riding the Storm and things like that. They're all very kind of pirate based, but not kind of like the kind of the mental pirate stuff that you kind of get now, like like Ailstorm and things like that. But yeah, Running Wild are awesome. I mean, Running Wild are almost kind of like a German kind of Iron Maiden. A lot of songs about war and things like that. Mm-hmm. They're great. Underrated, man. Another one, Budgie. Every Metallica fan obviously will know Bread Fan, but Budgie are such an awesome band. They had, they're real. They could, as far as I'm concerned, some of their records, stands shoulder to shoulder with like the best of the '70s. Like Led Zeppelin and all that sort of stuff. They're just so heavy and kind of unique as well. A lot of sort of, it's a little bit different and stuff from Budgie, and yeah, those guys are great.
I always said to me, I mean, everybody talked about the big ones. Of course, there was Metallica and, who the best bands were, whatever. But I always said the Cult. And I thought, I thought over here, I don't know how it was over there, but I always thought the Scorpions over here didn't get the credit they deserved. I mean, when they came over here, they already had a volume 2 for greatest hits. But when they came over here, people didn't realize the Scorpions. You take them to me until Winds of Change, which I hated. Then until then, they could go head to head with any band there was. I just remember getting live at First Thing and going, these motherfuckers.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when they did Big City Nights, dun, 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 dun. And I mean, I just remember playing my air guitar with my tennis racket going, trying to be like Matthias Jabs. I remember that. And I remember the Cult, the first 4 albums by the Cult, I just remember getting electric. And those first 3 songs kicked your ass, man. A Wildfire.
Yeah.
What's another? The first 3 songs, and it had Love Removal Machine, motherfucker. When he goes, baby. And if you really think about it, Ian Astbury was just as good as any front man in metal ever. He was just as good as Robert Plant. He was just as good as David Lee Roth, which brings me to, I think Van Halen just may be the greatest metal band ever. And I don't know if you consider them metal, but think about it. Van Halen, they didn't have a weakness. The greatest guitarist, Eddie Van Halen, arguably, but I say he was. And then you had the drums, and you had on the Skins, and you had the bass with Michael Anthony. Where was their weakness?
Yeah, exactly. Van Halen as a musical unit were just so tight. Everyone goes on, oh, Eddie Van Halen, he could do all the tapping and all that, but all of it worked. It worked because Michael Anthony, was great on bass and he had great backing vocals. Song like "Ain't Talking About Love," which is my favorite Van Halen song.
Yes.
You've got that's just so that's Van Halen firing on all cylinders. Yeah, Van Halen were great. I mean, I love the Scorpions. I think they don't get enough credit over here, personally. But I remember my introduction to Scorpions was I remember watching like an old sort of German kind of version of Top of the Pops, and they did "He's a Woman, She's a Man," and I thought, oh, that's cool. And I remember hearing Blackout, and that just blew my mind. I was like, whoa, this is something on another level. And I'd heard like Rock You Like a Hurricane because it's quite a popular song, and I liked it. But yeah, like you say, when you hear stuff like Big City Nights, Bad Boys Running Wild, Crossfire. It's Still Loving You is.
My God, dude, that solo.
It's the heaviest love song I've ever heard.
When he hits that solo, it's still just
Yeah.
another one. The prickles on my neck.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that will kick your ass like Blackout. When you first put on Blackout, that and then you're like, oh,
that
boy.
was, yeah. When I picked up guitar at the start of the pandemic. I did it a little bit in high school, but I didn't have the discipline to kind of stick at it. But I remember things were locking down, and I thought, I've been wanting a guitar for a while, so I'm going to go into the shop. I'm going to get everything, because if we're going to be in lockdown, then I want something to focus on. And that was definitely one of the first songs I was like, I need to learn this riff. Blackout is just, it's too good. I can give it a try if you.
Oh, please
like.
do. I was going to ask you if you had your guitar. Matter of fact, one of the readers I asked for a question, he goes, what kind of guitar rig do you have?
What do I have a guitar? Well, I have, hang on, I'm wrecking the joint here. So I have 3 guitars. This is, I'll show you, not the listeners can see, but I've got the Adrian Smith Jackson signature. This is the first guitar I bought. It's had a little bit of work done to it. There's a new Seymour Duncan pickup in it, so this is very special to me. It's I have an Alex Lifeson Epiphone, the new one, which is great, and I just have a Mexican made Fender Stratocaster, just because I've always wanted to own a Fender Stratocaster. I've always loved it, growing up, and obviously being an Iron Maiden fan and seeing those guys play Strats, and Richie Blackmore and all those guys, it just that was the thing for me. As far as rigs go, since I moved into my own flat, I've had to turn the noise down a bit, so I've not been able to use the Marshall yet, which is a shame, because with the Marshall I use the Catlin Bred Sabracadabra pedal for my gain, for all my gain. So that's how I get that. But currently I'm using a Boss Katana Mark II, the 100-watt one. So you can turn that down to a nice room-friendly 0.5 watt, which is great. Pedal-wise, I have a tube screener, Ibanez tube screener, just, the de facto metal. You just need that pedal if you're going to play hard rock and heavy metal. I have an MXR chorus pedal, which is the same one apparently that Slash used on Paradise City. I didn't buy it for that particular reason. I just liked the pedal. I have an MXR phaser pedal and an MXR carbon copy delay, which is great. And I also have there's a great kind of pedal company that sort of does entry level pedals. Called Landlords, and they do a great delay pedal, which is called the Tap Room Delay, which I use for, like, if I'm ever playing kind of I use it for there's a little bit at the start of 2112 where it goes da 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 da. So that's where I hit that. Or when I'm playing do you know Victim of the Psychic Wars by Blue Oyster Cult?
No, I don't know that one.
That's a great tune. The solo in that's very heavily delayed, so I kick it on for that. But yeah, that's my rig. Basically, it's fairly modest. I think it would be the best way to describe it. But let's get this Blackout.
Rip it, man. Rip it for me.
I hope this comes through all right.
Okay.
Something like that.
Hey, can you play a little Ace Frehley? Can you get Shock Me from Ace Frehley?
Do you know? You sent me that message last night. I'm going to have a look online and see what the video's like to the lesson.
Yeah.
Because there's a lesson with Ace Frehley, and I thought, okay, good. And then he starts doing all this stuff. I was like, I'm not going to be able to learn that on a lunch break. However, I think I might be able to play the riff.
Okay.
Let me just change to my Fender, because that's in the correct tuning for Shock Me.
I love it. Okay.
At least I think it's in the correct tuning. It's I've not got I've got 9s on this currently, so when you tune it away from standard, it tends to not stay in tune so much. So I do need to get heavier strings, but I think if I remember, the intro riff goes something like this. Yes. Let me try that again. You know, now that I'm on the spot, it's completely slipped my mind.
You mean sing it for you?
Sing it for me, BTs.
And
yeah,
baby,
me,
if
BT.
you do what you've been told, if it's a laser gun, girl, you make my overload. Dun, 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 dun. Don't pull the plug on me, no, no. Yeah, and keep me high and shock me, make me feel better. Yes.
I never got it. I ain't got it now. Let me get that. I'm determined to get this now.
That's it.
Something like that. Yeah. I don't know enough Kiss songs on the guitar. I really need to.
Oh my God.
I need to change that. So apologies to any Kiss fans listening right now. They're going, no, it's not. It's not correct. It's wrong.
Lou, man, honestly, you could play that all day. I could listen to that. Honestly, you're talented, man. We got to wrap it up. Listen, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give you the top 3. Give me your top 3 lead guitarists of all time. Not named Eddie Van Halen. Not named Jimi Hendrix. Give me your top 3 lead guitarists.
Oh, top 3 lead guitarists. Well, obvious one for me, Alex Lifeson.
Okay.
You know, Adrian Smith. Okay. I think he's my favorite of the I main guys, and I think I've got to go for one of the Judas Priest guys. So I'm going to go Glenn Tipton.
Oh, okay. Give me your top 3 all-time MotoGP riders.
Oh, wow.
Top 3 all time. All time.
Well, Valentino Rossi's got to be in there. I think Kenny Roberts has got to be in there as well. Kenny Roberts Senior. And Mick Doohan, I think. Mick Doohan, Rossi, and Kenny Roberts Senior.
Over Marquez. You think Marquez is a
well, see, because he's racing still, I kind of don't like to kind of group like current riders into, obviously Rossi's retired, so he can get away with it. But yeah, Marquez would be there, but obviously his career's got a long way to go. So
at least we hope.
I mean, hopefully his arm gets back to full fitness and we'll be, you know, I think we'll see the real Marquez back next year. We need to, you know, we need it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lewis Duncan, international editor of Autosport magazine, Tank Slappers podcast, 6-string god from Scotland. I could talk to you for another hour, dude, on just music alone, on just the Fernandez brothers alone, and just GP alone. I knew it was going to be this way. I knew it was because, like I said, I just felt the synergy with you when, from the first moment, I think we were on, I forget which GP it was, and you went on for something. I saw that Saxson shirt. I said, I got to talk to this dude. And I just knew it would be that way. I just felt that. And it sounds cheesy, but I'm a cheesy dude. But I just felt that from you, man. So thank you for your time, Lewis, man. I appreciate you, brother.
It's been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for having me. I've had so much fun. I've been looking forward to this.
Man,
you know, since you dropped me a message, I've been so buzzing.
Same here, dude. I was up all night about 3 or 4 in the morning going, what do I ask this dude? What do I try to get him to play? And I just, like I said, man, metal and GP, man, it brings us together, brother. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for your time, Lewis Duncan. Look him up, L Duncan 666 on Instagram. That's straight metal right there. If you know 80s metal, 666. I love it, man. So thank you for your time, Lewis Duncan. I appreciate you. Thank you for people watching Tales from a Gemini. I appreciate you. And as usual, you know what we say about this time. Peace.